my name is Marcel. I write for a blog Lesser Known Gems, and I'm going to talk about Shakespeare. More precisely, I'm going to talk about women accused of being unfaithful in 3 of Shakespeare's plays. The first one is Othello, the second one is Much Ado About Nothing, and the third one is Cymbeline. I don't have a physical copy of Cymbeline. The reason why I think it's relevant to talk about these 3 plays is that these 3 plays represent 3 different styles of writing for William Shakespeare, and were written sort of very different parts of his life and different parts of his writing style. You have Cymbeline, who was written in 1611 and represent his later phase. It's one of his romantic plays and also one of the last plays he ever wrote. It wasn't the last, but one of the last. Now, Othello is a representative of his tragedies. It was written in 1603, the same year Queen Elizabeth I died. And the Much Ado About Nothing was written between 1598 and 1599. We're not really sure quite about when that is, because details from that time is kind of difficult to find and distract Freudians. Much Ado About Nothing is a very typical comedy of Shakespeare. Now, what the 3 plays is about is that Othello is about a black guy, a Moor, who married a white woman, is tricked by his friend, or seemed as his friend, Iago, to think that his wife was unfaithful, and he killed her and killed himself afterwards. Much Ado About Nothing, at least the part I'm going to talk about, is about 2 young people who are very much in love and who agree to marry. The man thinks that the woman is unfaithful, and on their wedding day, in front of everyone, accuses her of being unfaithful. She faints, he leaves, they assume that she is dead, they are told that she is dead, they then tell him that no, she wasn't unfaithful, and he is then tricked into marrying her afterwards, after he sort of makes amends. It's not the plot you know from Much Ado About Nothing. That is what's supposed to be the main plot, and then the subplot with Benedict and Beatrice, which is much known, has sort of taken over. The part of Cymbeline that we're going to talk about involves 5 people. You have Cymbeline, who's the king, who's just remarried to a queen, and his daughter, Imogen. The king, Cymbeline, and the new queen wants her to marry the queen's son, Cloten. But Imogen has married a nobleman called Posthumus, who is very noble but very poor, and this makes the king and queen quite angry. So Posthumus is thrown out of the country, and Imogen goes to the room and refuses to get out. When Posthumus gets to Italy, he has a discussion with a soldier called Giacomo. And Giacomo bets that he can get Imogen into bed. He travels and tries to seduce Imogen, fails, tricks Imogen to get information about her that he then presents to Posthumus as if he's been to bed with her. Posthumus thinks Giacomo has managed to seduce her, sends a letter to his servant to say, she has been unfaithful, kill her. The servant says, no, I think she's innocent, and then says to Imogen, you should hide and pretend you're dead, and then we'll figure out what happens afterwards, which Imogen does. Then Posthumus and Giacomo travels back to the court of Cymbeline. They figure out that Giacomo has actually tricked Posthumus, Posthumus is terrified of what he's done. Imogen, in the disguise of a guy, then comes out and says, "Oh, don't be sad." Posthumus smacks her. She faints. Then they figure out, oh, that's actually Imogen, the one we thought was dead. Everyone is happy. Cymbeline is known as the play with all the plots for a reason. What you sort of see with all of these different stories is that it's about a man who's either married or going to marry a woman, is then tricked by given, and I know I'm going to get a lot of discussions about this. I claim that the proof they are given is kind of good. I mean, it's not hearsay, or, well, it's hearsay, but it's sort of believable hearsay. And yes, a lot of them are sort of are all over the place and saying, yes, I believe it, even before they're given the proof, but they're given kind of solid proof about it. They then accuse the woman of being unfaithful, which has three different results. In Much Ado About Nothing, she is thought to be dead because she faints. And in Cymbeline and Othello, Othello then kills her, and in Cymbeline, he tells his servant to kill her. Then you sort of figure out that, oh, she was innocent. And in the romantics and in the comedy, because that's what these plays demand, they demand a happy ending. You get the happy ending. You get the marriage in Much Ado About Nothing, and you get the couple reunited in the romantics. Well, in the tragedy, because it demands an unhappy ending, you get the unhappy ending. You get the innocent woman killed and her killer killing himself. But why these three plots are so relevant is another aspect of it. And that is, in these three plots, you are talking about women of nobility. The lowest sort of on the rank is Much Ado About Nothing, which is, they're noble, but they're poor, but they're still big enough to be friends with the king. In Othello, it's the same deal. He's rich, but it's still sort of high up on the ranks. And in Cymbeline, you're talking about the princess. You're talking about the person who's inheriting the throne in the beginning of the play. And another aspect they have to remember regarding this is that nobility, when it came to women, that despite women not having power at this time, them being faithful was kind of important, because who they had sex with determined who had power, because they were the ones giving birth to the nobleman, the kings, the princess. So you sort of needed to know that they were actually having sex with the people they were saying they were having sex with, in regard to the current noblemen, the current princes, and the current kings. And the biggest aspect of this is that Queen Elizabeth's mother, Anne Boleyn, was beheaded because she was accused of being unfaithful. Let me say that again. The Queen's mother was accused of being unfaithful. This could, in theory, have jeopardized Queen Elizabeth's entire claim to power, because if her mother really had been unfaithful, then she might not have been Henry VIII's daughter. She might not have been a princess, and if she hadn't been a princess, she had no right to be queen. So this wasn't just a small issue of feminist rights. This was huge political power. And what's so interesting about these three plays and how it's presented in these three plays is that William Shakespeare is pretty much saying, okay, I know that there is kind of big proofs that these women have been unfaithful, but they might not have been. And maybe if we've just given them time, then we might see that they haven't been unfaithful at all. He's pretty much backing up the idea that maybe if we had just given Anne Boleyn some time, she might not have been unfaithful. Which, considering two of them were written during the time of Queen Elizabeth, would have been kind of giving her, yeah, we like you. And I'm assuming that Queen Elizabeth would have liked quite as much. Because in the end, that is determining the thing about these three plays, is that if given time, they are figured out that they have been innocently claimed. The tragedy of Othello, the play where you weren't given enough time, was that the moment he had killed his wife's servant and wife of Iago runs in and says, "What have you done? Why have you killed her?" "Well, she has been unfaithful." "No, she hasn't. I was the one who found that proof. I was the one who gave it to Iago, and Iago was the one who gave it to you. She was innocent." That happens the moment that Desdemona is dead, the wife is dead. And that's also interesting in regard to what is the law, sort of when Othello is killing Desdemona, the things that she is asking for. She is asking him for more time. "Please don't kill me, banish me, at least give me an hour so I can pray." And he doesn't give her that hour. And maybe if she had had that 1 hour, she would have survived. And that is what you see in his comedies and his romantics, that what is given the happy ending is the time for the man who has been tricked to figure out that his wife was actually innocent. And while those might just be funny or tragic plays for us as readers today, because, well, we have birth control and we also have pregnancy and paternity tests in higher degrees, these themes and these subplots actually had a huge political impact in the time that they were written. And that really gives and shows the depths of these plays. So when you read them, if you're going to read them, if you're going to look at or watch a production of them, remember that they meant a lot during those times. So remember, better a witty fool than a foolish wit.